afternoon, everybody. This is Bart Sharp of Becoming Quantum Conscious at United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 105.3 out of the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. And we can also be found on YouTube, Facebook, and now on Roku, which is kind of cool. And who we have today, and we are together not on two remote locations, but in Lecointe, France, and I am with Aletheia, Pistis, Sophia.
Hello, Bart.
How are you doing?
Amazing.
I'm so happy to have you on the show. This is a very magical place, and you are a magical woman. And what better person to bring here to talk about one of the more esoteric and magical and for many sacred persons, and that is Mary Magdalene, who some say, and of course, whenever you bring up the Magdalene, you bring up controversy and a lot of like, it was this way, or no, it was that way, and there's just a lot of with that. Maybe it's more of a consciousness we're looking for with Mary Magdalene.
Well, I think the first thing I want to say is, can you be open to perhaps allow the possibility that there is an apostolic succession of people who have held the Magdalene transmission from her hand? So we accept that there's one from Peter, we accept that there's one from Paul and Simon and Matteo and all of those apostles, Anglicans, Methodists, Mormon, on and on and on. Can we believe that there is also one from Mary Magdalene?
Yes, who would be the most important voice, obviously, and seems like there's been so few during history that have not listened to her who wrote the history, as opposed to an underlying reality where history was recorded in a different way about the Magdalene. And Aletheia is a master storyteller as well as a healer and workshop artist, writer on feminine, divine feminine, sacred relationships, Magdalene consciousness, and more than that. And so we're just going to let her go today and talk about Mary Magdalene and tell us a wonderful story. So I'm going to just give it to Aletheia and step back a little bit and enjoy the show, as I hope everybody does here on United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Network, of this unique story of Mary Magdalene in France. I'll give it to you.
Well, hello there, folks. This is the story of the Holy Order of Mary Magdalene. And as I said, there is an apostolic line of succession going from Mary to her 12 and out and out and out and out and out. And it hasn't been broken, and it's intact, and it continues on. If anything, it's thriving. So maybe you don't have to be so attentive. You don't have to be looking at your screen or listening to your radio, but you say to yourself, you know what, let me just open up. Let me just open up and just see how all this lands. Because it is a story. I have absolutely no evidence of what I'm saying. Much.
Some evidence.
Some evidence and a few little bits of piecing together. Mary Magdalene is revered here in France. Many locals, especially in the Provençal and what was the Languedoc, it is now called Occitania or Occitanie again. There's two hotspots in the south of France, and these are the two that contain the most tales, the most stories. I believe we are 100% right to say Mary Magdalene, her brother Lazarus, her sister Martha, Mary Salome, and the other Mary, I forgot.
Jacoby?
Yep, that's the one. And of course, we must not forget Maximus. Came to France. They didn't intend to come to France because their little boat had no sail. It had no oars. It had no rudder. It really was just the bottom of a boat. They stepped into this vessel and hoped for the best. And the sea, or Gaia, movement, current, brought them very, very close off the shore, close to the second largest Roman town at the time, Marseille. Let's just go back to Maximus a moment, because this is very important, very dear to my heart. So Maximus was a Roman centurion. He was the one who opened up the arms to nail the hands into the cross. And maybe, I don't know, here comes the storytelling part, maybe he managed to do one, but we do know at some point he caught the eye of Jesus, and that beautiful transmission floated across, and he dropped down his mallet, and he took a few steps backwards, and he knew who this person was. The transmission had landed, and he couldn't do the second hand. And he knew this is the Messiah. But look how far we've got. We cannot undo what has been done. He is being crucified. He is on his way to the full crucifixion. And so that tremendous guilt, no doubt, shame, regret, horror at his own actions, and realizing that this beautiful man is in the process of forgiving him profoundly with grace and love. And so with that, he drops his mallet. He knows that Mary Magdalene is the beloved. He knows, I can't lose sight of this woman. She is my salvation. If there's one way of me forgiving myself, it's through her. So this Maximus just hangs around. He's always a few steps behind her. He doesn't approach her. He can't at this point. But he just won't disappear. And she knows. And she knows what's coming. And I have a feeling that she extended her grace and included Maximus and said, I know you're there and you will be until the end of time. So I welcome you, brother. And when you're ready, I'm ready. And so this little cluster of people got in their sailless, rudderless, oarless little boat. And perhaps weeks later, they're coming close to a place that we now call Sainte Marie de la Mer, which was once a Roman podium. And where the church of Sainte Marie de la Mer was a temple of Ra. Basically, I got a feeling it's so flat. And I think there's so much sky in the Camargue that you've just got so much sun energy. It's the perfect place to have a temple of Ra, because there's nothing blocking the light. It's just flat. You've got this gorgeous arc. Now, here is where we meet another important person, Sarah Lacali. Maybe she was wearing a dress a bit like mine, bright and coloured. She's a gypsy Romany queen, an oracle, a prophetess. She's Egyptian. She's carrying perhaps a royal bloodline, and she's the queen of this clan. Anyway, she's sleeping, and suddenly her eyes wake up. Someone is coming to shore. She has a prophetic dream and a vision that says, wade out to sea. There is an important arrival, literally a few hours from here. They need your help. They can't come to shore. Just go, just go. And so I often imagine she had enormous gypsy dresses on, skirts and petticoats and finery. And so she waded out, and I imagine she was strong and tanned and Romany. And so her skirts catch the water, and they billow and balloon, and suddenly, woohoo, she's lost her footing. But it doesn't matter because her dress has become a raft. So if you can imagine red and yellow and green and purple and bronzed arms and dark curly hair wading towards you, Sarah Lakali, bright eyes and full of Shakti, she slings her muscular arm over the top of the little boat and swims back to Sainte Marie de la Mer, dragging this little boat of holy people with her. Where that boat kissed the shore of Sainte Marie de la Mer, that very moment, a freshwater spring bubbles up and is still there today. It's on the beach. A freshwater spring bubbling up beside the Mediterranean. The moment that little nose touched, they've landed. So Sarah brings them in and no doubt says, be careful. This is a Roman city. There's a temple of Ra over there. Come with me. Come where we are settled, the gypsies. We have our own little settlement just on the outskirts. I'll keep you warm. I'll keep you fed. I'll keep you informed. And so off they go. And they stay with the gypsies for a while, being guarded, being fed, being watered. Remember that name, Sarah Lakali. It's also an important note to say that our Mary might well be showing pregnancy. And this is where I don't feel that at this point Mary went across to Saint Baume in Provence to prepare for her passing. And that's one of the strong tales, that she went off into the forest with Maximus, and for 30 years she lived at the base of Saint Baume in repentance. You're not going to do that if you're pregnant. You can't do that. You got to put that child first. You got to have your Shakti. You got to keep that little one safe. It's not really about you anymore, but this one. Plus, she's still youthful. So my feeling is this. She got the lowdown from Sarah Lakali that said, Mary, you got to go there. See those mountains? Well, you can't see those mountains, but she would have pointed in the direction of the Pyrenees and said, that place is full of heretics. The Church of Rome, or it hadn't been established at that point, but the state religion has not and will not touch those people. These people are wild, they are unruly, they know their own self. Head for the Pyrenees. She may well have said, Lazarus, you go this way. You go to Marseille. Martha, you go to Tarascon. It seems as if Sarah was their angel and gave them the lowdown and the suggestions, go here, go there, go there. But for whatever you do, don't hang around here. The south coast is mobbed by Romans. So when she was strong and when they'd said their goodbyes, off they went, poof, dispersed into different corners. So Mary Magdalene has been told to head for the Pyrenees. And so instead of obviously following the Roman paths, she follows the waters, she follows the riverways, the rivulets. And from Sainte Marie de la Mer, she will start to head towards perhaps Perelos, where we find the Sacred Union Cave. I'm just going to name lots of little names. From there, she goes towards perhaps Chateau de Peripetus. Wouldn't have been a chateau at that time, but another Roman outpost. She's following the waters. From Peripetus over into the gorge of Galamus, which was inhabited by hermits at that point. Folks say of the line of Solomon. So if that is true, that would have been a good conversation. Hermits from the Temple of Solomon and Mary Magdalene and Maximus. Now, as she leaves the back end of Galamus, noticing, of course, Mount Bugarash, which is already attracting Jewish settlers, because the tale is that a second Mount Carmel appeared on that mountain, and it was a second Essene community. And there are archaeological finds to suggest such truth. So coming around the back of Bucharest, she would have then picked up the news of the Temple of Isis at a little village that we now call Rennes-le-Château, and the waters, the hot waters of what we now call Rennes-le-Bain. I imagine that Mary Magdalene is carrying important items, including what's in her little tummy. When she figures out that there is this temple of Isis, perhaps she senses, or perhaps she has been told, deposit your most treasured items here. It's not safe for you to be together, because if you're found, they're found. Perhaps she offers her sacred treasures to the priestesses of Isis, who recognize who she is and know exactly what to do with them, and hide them, squirrel them away somewhere. And on she continues up towards where we are now, Montségur, and even higher still, laying low, finding the right time, being pregnant, and tending to that inner journey. Years later, possibly, Mary goes, I'm ready. She comes out of hiding, and perhaps there's a little one running around, a little girl, because suddenly she's ready to start teaching, giving sermons, baptizing, healing, and the whole thing begins again. So whatever we thought happened in that Holy Land turned the page, because the whole thing happens again in this region. And now it's Mary Magdalene at the helm. She also draws towards her 12. And there are sermons, there are masses, they wouldn't have been called masses at that point, gatherings in little homes, little woodlands that beside the spring. And it's passing over into these people who are already of a heretical nature. And of course, living in the Pyrenees, it is known as the other world. This is where, energies meet and mingle. And so what it is she was saying managed to get in very, very deep and be almost lived. So the people were willing to listen and transform and live this particular lifestyle. Still with Maximus in the background, and perhaps a little Sarah. At a certain point, it's fair to say that Joseph, the uncle of Arimathea, may have said the same thing. Ladies, Mary, Sarah, it breaks my heart to say this, but if you're found, she's found, and if she's found, you're found. I really suggest, as the uncle, that you at least give me an ear. My suggestion is this. I found a nice young man in Glastonbury. He's the son of a druid priest king from Wales, and he's about the same age as Sarah. His father is the high priest king of Glastonbury and Avalon. It's a good mix, and if you think about it, we're bringing together two very important families. So my suggestion is I take little Sarah across to the Isle of Avalon. These folk are willing to take her in. And Mary, you now accept your path, which is to really open up, knowing that your girl is safe. So that mother in you can switch off a little bit. She is going to go on her way, and she will have her 12, and the whole thing is going to unravel quite nicely. But now, Mary, you just live for yourself, and you widen that transmission beyond anything you've ever imagined. And so that's how I feel that part went. And at a certain point, let's just say 20 years, I don't know, 20 years, 25 years, she must have looked back and gone, well, this is working rather well. I have my 12 disciples. Sarah has been married, and I hear he's rather fetching. She has also been moved to Iona, so Sarah has been given this little island off Scotland called Iona. which is very pristine, very high energy. She's happy in her marriage. And the whole thing is unraveling with Sarah. She now, it hasn't happened yet, but she is drawing towards her 12. And people were going. They were compelled to go to Iona. They're looking for someone on Iona. And when they see this person, they don't know, is it male or female? They're just going to say, I recognize you. I've come for you. Teach me. And so perhaps now we can go to the Provençal story. Mary looks around and says, all is rather well. This is strong. This is in their blood. It has landed. My girl is safe. And yeah, come to think of it, I can feel my energy diminishing. It's now time for me to have this quiet moment, even though Maximus is around. I'm going to go back to where I came. And who knows, maybe Sarah Lecali is still there. Did she go past Saint Marie de la Mer to just say hi? Well, I know I would have. I'd have just looked in and said, is she? Oh, no, okay, she's gone. So I go on. And so this is where we pick up our Saint Bon. So now it is a time of solitude. It is a time of preparation. It's a time of getting your eggs in your basket, despite Maximus being around, who comes in rather handy at this point because he's chopping wood, he's bringing food, and he's bringing some water to the mouth of this, becoming this holy cave. And years pass. Mary's preparing. There's even talk of shepherds looking up and seeing a Mary Magdalene in the sky being cradled by 7 angels, and that this seems to happen 7 times a day. And the local folk of what is now Saint Maxime say that a real Mary Magdalene was seen floating up and down through the sky regularly every day. And this is the real backbone of the Provençal story, because as she's preparing, she's rising her vibration, I guess. And because it's 7 times a day, surely that's to do with the 7 chakras. So as she's meeting him, off she goes, and then perhaps, no, now's not the time. Okay, straight back down to that Saint Bon again. And so up and down, up and down. And so if you think about that up and down motion, that's a little bit erotic. So I have a feeling that her preparing to meet the Lord again was an erotic, humble, graceful, peaceful, profound experience. So that's what Mary's up to. Maximus, on the other hand, when he's not chopping wood and preparing food, sort of wanders down to the flat land, and people are like, who are you? I don't recognize you. So now Maximus starts opening up, and he's got 2 really big tales to tell. He's got his story of Jesus, and he's also got his story of Mary Magdalene. So the local people are like, God, hanging on his every word. And so a little gathering place starts happening. Maximus agrees, okay, once a day I'll come down and I'll share with you another thing that I witnessed and another thing that I heard. So now another little community is starting to gather. And this becomes an oratory, meaning it's a little chapel, but it's not a building. It's a meeting place, oratory, or oral transmission. And the people are starting to gather to listen to Maximus. And he now has a couple of 100 people per day hanging on his every word. And this is a very exquisite part of the tale. Mary's always up in the cave. When she feels, oof, today could be the day. So not only does she recognize, oh, I could pass over today, but there's also unfinished business. She hasn't faced Maximus. Maximus still hasn't faced her. And this is one of the Provençal tales. She comes down the side of Saint Bon, and all the way through the forest. And she shows up at the service of Maximus.
Mhm.
And Maximus says, "My lady, what are you doing here? Aren't you?" And she offers herself up for Holy Communion. And so he's having a bit of a John the Baptist moment, which I can't give. What do you mean, Holy Communion? I can't possibly give you Holy Communion. You are Holy Communion. And she's like, "Give me the Holy Communion." And so as he gives her the host and the glass of wine, she dies in his arms.
Mm.
And the congregation see it. And this is his. She gave herself to him. And now he opens up with his flood of tears, because this is his intimate moment. He hasn't been able to look at her, let alone hold her. So now he's got the warm body of Mary Magdalene in his lap. He's just given her the Holy Communion. She's passed away because of the ecstasy of it all. And he is coming to terms with the profound truth of, I have been forgiven. And now he is the Bishop of Marseille. Look how this is unraveling. So you've got Maximus here, you've got Sarah up there, you've got Mary Magdalene leaving behind her legacy in the mountains. This thing is just unfolding, and there's no stopping this. There's no stopping this. So the oral tradition is set, and this is how it is. So now there's stories of Mary Magdalene, there's stories of Jesus, there's stories of Maximus. She came down, she had the Holy Communion, she died in his arms. Oh my God, everyone's chat. So it spreads. And centuries later, we now have these folk called, well, they didn't call themselves the Cathars, they were called Cathars. They are the descendants of these early people. And at a certain point, Gilbert de Cast, I'm saying it terribly wrong, he was the Cathar bishop.
Mm.
He was nominated to be considered Pope. That's how parallel this religion was. They weren't calling themselves a religion, but from the Church of Rome's point of view, this is a parallel religion. So Mary Magdalene's man, Gilbert de Cast, who was a Cathar bishop, was nominated to be considered the next Pope. He could have been seated on the throne of the Vatican. That's how powerful the Cathars were. And that, I really want to drive that one home. This is not a low level sneaking around in the secrets, grassroots movement. This is filled with pumping hearts and pumping blood. And so at that point, I guess, when the Cathar bishop was a nominee for the Pope of Rome, plus the number of females that were in the faith because they were welcomed, plus the outspokenness of the females, I'm thinking Esclamant de foi, telling the Roman Catholic priests, you've got it wrong, you've made a mistake. Something snapped. Something caused the camel's straw on his back to snap, because there was no longer any more tolerance. And now this parallel faith just simply had to go. We'd reached our tolerance. And so not only one, but 2 crusades were sent their way down here into the south of France to kill off as many Cathars as possible, and Knights Templars, and anyone who happened to have any kind of sympathy or open heart towards this history that has been here.
And that was around 1200. This is the time and space we're talking about.
Yes. Yes, yes. So many, many, many centuries have passed. And there we have the Albigensian Crusade to just exterminate the Cathars, the Templars, any sympathizers, anyone offering a home to these people, anyone offering an ear to these people, and the encouragement to spy on your neighbor. So if you've got a feeling, I got a funny feeling, Cathars, you are encouraged and you're given rewards for grassing on these people. And so then we enter a very horrible time of persecution and a lot of blood. But let's just say that word again. A lot of blood got spilt on this land. Pathways, sacred sites, the cathedrals, natural cathedrals of the Cathars, the churches of love, a lot of blood got spilt. But if you ask any esoteric person, where is the spirit? Where is the soul in the body? They will say, it's in the blood. So, yes, the human being has gone, but the contents of that human being has just soaked into the earth. And that is why when we say, come and walk the land, come back to those old places and retrieve what you know you are part of. And there comes that barefoot walking. Soak up what was spilt. The spirit is in the land. It's in the blood that got spilt. And those Cathars, as they were burning at the stake, in all the Inquisition records, it's the same old thing again and again. They were fearless. They, in fact, were showing signs of joy, peace, and grace. So is that the teachings of Mary Magdalene? I often think back to Lazarus, her brother. So Lazarus was dead.
Yes.
Jesus came along and raised him from the dead. So in her little knapsack of teachings, is there something that prepares you for death, that you have simply no fear of it? And this is coming from Lazarus. So this is what her brother may have shared with her, because that's one of the key components of the Cathar tradition. There is a fearlessness, but an embodied fearlessness. It's not a, I'm not afraid of dying, let's go up. It's like, oh, let's go right down. I'm not afraid of dying because what I'm holding is rather important. And death does not separate me from it. So do what you will. Take my head off. So there we are. We have the marriage of the Occitan tales of Mary Magdalene with the Provençal tales of Mary Magdalene. Oh, there are a few more key points. Her body. So Maximus took her body, placed it in an alabaster sarcophagus. That's an interesting point. Where did he get that from?
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll come back to that one next show. He places her body in an alabaster sarcophagus and buries her, which is very traditional for Jewish people, even though he's Roman, buries her underneath this oratory, just at the bottom of St. Bom, just before you get into St. Maxime. Today, there is what looks like an elaborate lamppost, which opens up, and then you've got a Mary Magdalene with her 7 cherubim being taken through the sky. And it's called the signal of Mary Magdalene. But you have to know it's there because you will easily drive past it. You'll just think it's a stone, elaborate something or other. Back up a few moments. This is where her body was. This was the site where Maximus was doing his preaching. Later, as that Roman town, St. Maximin, gets bigger, they decide, those after Maximus, let's put Mary's body underneath this little church that's just starting to get made. So there she is now. She's in the middle of St. Maximin. A little town is developing, and still there's words of Mary Magdalene and Maximus everywhere. And then finally, King Louis's nephew, can't remember his name, young man, he has a dream of Mary Magdalene who says, "Come and find me." And now he has the spirit. He's been compelled by Mary to come and search for her body. And he's got the time and he's got the money, and he does exactly that. And so he comes straight down the south, and he's listening and he's asking, and what can you tell me? What do you remember? What did your grandma say? What did your ancestors say? And so eventually, after some time, it's pretty likely that she's underneath this church, this little church in St. Maximin. And so he orders an evacuation. And of course, he finds the sarcophagus. Mm-hmm. And in it is a little bit of parchment that has been sealed with red wax on the side of the sarcophagus. He breaks the seal and reads, "Herein lies the body of Mary Magdalene." And every time I think of that, I cry, because can you imagine? Mm-hmm. And he says in his writings, fragrance filled the cavern, the crypt. He knew that he'd found her even before. He didn't even need to read the message. He knew, I found her. This is her. And so, because he's got the time and because he's got the money, he says, this church is no good. We need a Gothic basilica. In fact, we need the best one in the whole of France to hold this lady's body. And that is why now, when you go to St. Maxim, you will see an impressive Gothic basilica where parts, not all, parts of her remain. Because during the French Revolution, she was ransacked, and half her body was taken and relocated to a place called Vézelay. So in France, there are two reputed places that say, we have the body of Mary Magdalene. And Vézelay say, no, we have the body of Mary Magdalene. They both do. They've got parts. St. Maxim is famous for the skull. So they've got Mary's head, which they encase, quite strange, in some sort of like death mask. Mm-hmm. So she has gold hair and a perspex front and the black skull, which gets paraded around. And in Vézelay, I believe they've got some legs. Okay. And some arms. So that is the tale of Mary in France. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very profound. Mm-hmm. I've heard a lot of Mary Magdalene stories, and that one's just so heart-wrenching and so profound. Yeah. And so many parts I never had heard.
There's moments where her body is taken because there's wars in France. And so at this point, she goes into a private family. And this is where I am now with my research. Mm. Who were they? Twice she's disappeared. Is it the same family? I think it might be.
Yeah.
But who are they?
Who would they be?
Could be the Merovingians.
Merovingians. And then you ask the question, well, who were the Merovingians?
Merovingians were the bloodline of Sarah and her high druid priest king, who then made the the French royal kings of France of that bloodline. And so there's a lot of folk in France waiting, when on earth are we going to have the return of the Merovingian king or queen?
And then those who said they were Merovingian kings and queens, but maybe we're not.
Yes. Yeah, wow. So as you can tell, very alive. But this story has gone nowhere despite many things being thrown to silence us. No, there's no silencing this.
No. And maybe the real important thing is, how do you feel in your heart when you hear the story?
Tears, truth, hope.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Courage. Somebody that was relentless in the pursuit of the deepest part of her spirit, whatever that was. Did you think that when she was here in this particular region, the Southwest France, that she preached and also was just out and about teaching?
I absolutely believe that, yeah. There are many places like Fontaine des Amours that suggest that this is Mary Magdalene's baptismal pool because of the salt water. There's quite a few pools saying, Mary baptized here. Yeah, I believe the consolamentum, which is the high ritual of the Cathars, goes back to Mary's time.
Wow.
It has to, if you think about it. And again, it's that, from death to life again, which makes me again think of Lazarus. I often think, God, it would be amazing to meet Lazarus.
Yeah.
After
being
brought back to life. What happened? What did you feel? What did you see? How do you feel? Who are you now? Are you the same? Blah, blah, blah. There must have been a great transmission that he carried. Yes. And when he was finally able to articulate it, he must have shared it far and wide.
Indeed. Indeed. And this was when you think of the Essenes, they must have been a people of light, of a very sacred race, maybe even ET oriented, that brought in beings that were maybe lighter, maybe more developed spiritually than just a lot of other people. And so they held a lot of that type of consciousness as well.
Yes.
And possibilities abound. Yeah. So it's always good to just hear these stories and see what it activates inside of you.
Yes. And contemplate. So if there are any moments in the tale where your heart went, oh, woohoo, that was big. When you get into bed tonight, revisit and contemplate. And remember, contemplate doesn't mean think. Contemplate means unravel. Just open one petal, then the other, and just be curious. What was it about that part of the tale that touched me so deeply? Because there is actually a Christian sect that would tell the stories of Jesus as their central teaching. So there was no dogma, there was no theology. They would tell the story of Jesus walking on water, and he's come for you. He extends his hand for you in the boat. He's saying to you, Bart, stand with me on the water.
And so what does that feel like inside of here?
Yes.
When you hear that story?
Yes.
What does that activate, so to speak?
Yes.
Maybe that's your own soul speaking to you.
Yes.
Which is the whole point of the story. It's an individual journey or discovery, as opposed to, we all follow the same rules, procedures, books, dogma.
Yeah. Maybe it's Jesus saying to you, Bart, come stand with me on the water. Maybe he hasn't stopped teaching. He just teaches in this way now.
As we find in this area of Southwest France, there's lots of spots that open your body and soul if you're willing to allow it and allow it to come inside of you.
Yes.
Yeah. It's amazing.
There is one element I missed out.
Please add in.
It's tiny. Let's just jump forward to about 100 years ago. Young man, Berenger Saunier, a young man has been given the parish of Rennes-le-Château. Coming from Paris, he's probably a bit like, is this it?
What year was this?
Oh, don't ask me about years. 100 years ago.
Yeah, 1870?
Something, yes. So if you can imagine a fresh Parisian young priest, got a lot of energy, and he's found himself in the chateau, boring. What shall I do? Oh, I know, I'll renovate the church. And so he starts to take down the church on top of Rennes-le-Château, which, remember, 2,000 years ago was an old Roman temple of Isis. Because what we do know is he struck one of the pillars and it was completely hollow, and in it is an immense treasure, which still to this day we cannot accurately say it was this, because he didn't tell a soul apart from his housekeeper, and she also kept the secret. Something highly controversial was found in that church.
Not telling us.
No, we can't say. And so from that tale, you get the Da Vinci Code. You get Holy Blood, Holy Grail. So my two penneth is he found what Mary Magdalene left behind. And that temple, I know that pillar, they say it's a Visigoth pillar. I say, no, it's a temple pillar.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a storyteller, I can say that. So maybe that pillar was a lot older than we thought. It wasn't Visigoth, it was older still, and it was one of the original, maybe it was just the base of one of the temple pillars. And it was where those women placed her treasures.
Indeed, it's an ancient place, and if you've never been to Rennes-le-Château, it's worth your time to go. All of these ley lines all converge to this one place. There's many power spots, and as you develop in your own spiritual awareness, my experience more appear to you.
Mm.
It just seems to be a big beacon of possibilities and consciousness where many things converge. If you're ready for one certain level, you'll get one certain vibration. If you've evolved to another, you'll get something else.
Yeah.
So it's been hallowed for who knows how long.
Mm.
I wanted to ask you, you're telling about the Hermitage de Galamouse. And for those who've never been to France, this is at the end of a gorge is a large cave, which became a holy place very, very early.
Mm.
And we know that this was probably before the time of Christ. When I go there, it seems to be an unbridled source of consciousness that goes much like Rennes-le-Château.
Mm.
We really can't tell how profoundly deep or in expansive in vibration it really is. I can never get to the end of it.
Mm.
I go there all the time, and I'm always expanded to new levels. So you were telling about a Jewish sect there. Is that true?
Yes, that was my research thus far, is that these hermits were of a lineage of Solomon.
And can you tell us a little bit about what was so special about Solomon?
So Solomon. Oh, okay. There's one tale I can tell. So King Solomon has so many wives, as we know, hundreds of wives. And at a certain point, he said to his advisors, I have one more wife to marry. I have one more wedding ceremony for you guys to organize. But this time, I'm going to marry the Holy Sophia. and this is me being truthful now.
Now, for those of you who don't know, in the more esoteric lines, the Holy Sophia is goddess of the universe.
Yes.
Goddess of the universe, folks. Yeah.
And so his advisors got to it and arranged an actual ceremonial space.
Mm-hmm.
And he got done up in his finery, and there's no doubt royal people in positions that they attend when there's a royal wedding about to happen. And he actually did marry the Holy Sophia. And it's at that point that this notion of King Solomon being extremely wise, because Sophia is wisdom, starts to really expand. And that there is a very noticeable and palpable difference in him. And he did not have another wedding after that one. So he kind of stopped there.
He stepped into a higher form of consciousness.
Yeah.
And there's also tales of Solomon and the line of David being in communion with higher sources in the universe, like the Egyptians,
Yes.
communing with the Hathors and Sirius. Solomon was along that same mindset. So,
Yes.
And some people researching in America have had tales of Solomon's investigations going over to America, that he was communing with the American Indian tribes there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's no small fry.
No.
So it really makes you wonder, well, why did those guys of Solomon go to a little hermitage cave, and we're talking a cave in a gorge,
Yes.
to start their spiritual sojourn? It must have been a tremendously powerful,
Yeah.
not extraterrestrial, spatial travel cave.
Yeah. Very clean, very pristine.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing around.
Yeah.
Just.
So if you like astral travel and you don't mind traveling to France, good place to go. Yeah. Ooh. I learned a lot about Mary Magdalene in this talk. I've heard all kinds of stories, and this is very enlightening. And the research and all the facts, and of course your wonderful storytelling, has made this a very entertaining hour, but also enlightening hour. So how do you serve just in the practical world? What do you do? Classes, books, etc.
I guess I desire greatly for folk to be able to reconnect with this transmission. Both Yeshua and Mary and Sarah and the continuation, so the Trinity really.
Yes.
And that it becomes an ordinary and everyday way of life.
Wow.
So it's an embodied practice, and it's a soulful practice. And
Yes.
that the people get given a really strong faith again.
Yes.
And so if anyone comes over and goes, "Jah," you're like, "Woof."
And so that's
You
what
can't
you're
shake
doing
me.
in some of your workshops that you're traveling about.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, it's always of this vein.
Have ticket, we'll travel.
Yeah.
She is a traveling girl. You like to travel, right?
Well, not since moving here.
Well, yeah, this has a strong pull inwards.
Yeah, it doesn't allow me to leave ever.
Well, you can always be on the internet.
Yeah.
And I always hope that you'll be back on my show to explore more topics, because you're just so much fun and delightful, and just been an amazing hour. So thank you so much, Aletheia.
Thank you, Bart.
And we are on United Public Radio and UFO Paranormal Radio. So we're broadcasting this message out to lots of people, even on Roku, YouTube, and Facebook. So thank you all for listening in and being here. If there's a little sound bite that you'd like to say to people, anything that one last thing?
I will say what I heard inside of me, which I believe was coming from that Mary place, saying, "Love with the whole of your body."
Ooh. Don't think about it, folks. Just be it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bart.